Thursday morning, August 22nd, 2019. And that's where we are. And we're looking at about, 5 weeks left of the regular season in Major League Baseball. And so we're going to take a deep dive this morning into where the teams are, who's hot, who's not. We're going to go down on the farm and see what's going on. And I want to thank Lenny for just a fabulous 9 o'clock show this morning. And here we are in the chat room, loaded up, ready to go. Good morning from Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports. Here we go. Right now, looking at the standings in the American League, the Yankees still lead the East by 9. They've lost 3 in a row, losing 2 in a row in Oakland. Last night, 6-4. We'll talk about that more in just a moment. Tampa 9 games out in the East. They're 74-54, having a run differential of 94 runs, which now, ranks all of 5th in the American League. Minnesota leading the Central Division now by 3 games over Cleveland. You know, I thought over the weekend that Cleveland would overtake Minnesota. I really did. And here we go. It just didn't happen. The Twins are playing some great baseball. They did lose last night 4-0 to the White Sox, but the Cleveland Indians lost to the Mets 4-3. So they maintain a 3-game lead over Cleveland in the Central. And today, of course, Minnesota continues their series at home against Detroit. And Cleveland, they're still in Flushing playing the Mets. In the West, the Houston Astros are 81-47, 7 games up on top of the Oakland A's. Oakland 73-43. And I'm going to talk about that wild card right now because that's where the action is in the American League. You got Cleveland on top of the wild card by a half game over Oakland and Tampa Bay. So you have 3 teams vying for 2 spots, all within a half game of one another. All play today. As I said, Cleveland's at the Mets, Oakland playing host to the Yankees, and Tampa Bay at Baltimore. Now you've got it's just going to be an exciting finish. I mean, the run is on, and here we go. Tampa, Oakland, Cleveland. Who do you like best? I want the chat room to talk to me this morning and let me know what are you thinking about as far as those 3 teams, where we're going to wind up. One's going to be out. And, the other possibility is you could have a tie. Looking at the run differential, Oakland, a plus 102. Then you've got Cleveland a plus 90 and Tampa a plus 94. So the run differentials there are pretty close. Home records, Oakland clearly the best home record amongst the 3, 42-24. So they have played 66 games at home and 60 games on the road. So they have more road games left than home. They're only 31-29 away from the Oakland Coliseum. Tampa, the inverse of that, they are 34-31 at home, so they have played 65 games at home, 40-23 on the road, 63 games on the road. They have a better road record than any of the 3 teams remaining, and they have more road games remaining than home. So there you go. Plus they're playing in Baltimore, and they got the Orioles on that schedule, Toronto on that schedule, Boston on that schedule. Boston's certainly not tearing down any houses, trying to get ready for the playoffs this year. So I like Tampa, and I like Oakland, and I like Cleveland. I think all 3 are worthy opponents. Cleveland, of course, still in the race for that Central Division crown as well. Could it be that we're talking about Cleveland, Oakland, and Tampa Bay? Could it be that Minnesota is the team that's out? Cleveland wins the division, and the Twins don't make the playoffs? Certainly, that's a possibility. So we'll keep our eye sharply tuned to that American League wild card and Central race going forward. Now, the National League, it's always the same story. It's the Central Division in the National League. That game last night between the Cubs and the Giants, did you stay up and watch it? I mean, wow. 12-11, the Cubs beat the Giants last night. What a game. I mean, if you like offense, then you were a happy camper last night watching that Cub-Giant game. And I just want to go over a little bit of it with you because it's worthy of discussion. I mean, batting, Yastrzemski leading off for the Giants went 3 for 5, 2 RBIs. He's hitting .282. Just been a hitting machine. He hit his 17th home run last night. He hit it in the 5th inning off of Yu Darvish with 1 on and 2 out. Longoria went 2 for 4. Longoria hit his 16th homer, a first-inning home run off of Darvish. Dickerson went 2 for 5. Stephen Vogt went 2 for 5 with 3 RBIs. Pilar 1 for 5. Crawford 2 for 3. And there's been some talk in San Francisco that going forward, Crawford could lose that job at shortstop. So he's going to need to turn it on, and he did do a good job last night going 2 for 4 for the Cubs. Jason Hayward leading off went 1 for 4. How about Nick Castellanos? I mean, ever since he got over away from Detroit into Chicago, he has been nothing less than a hitting machine. 4 for 5 last night in that 2-hole, 3 RBIs, 2 runs scored. He's upped his average to .293. He hit his 19th home run last night. In the first inning, he hit one off of Rodriguez for San Francisco. If you're a Cub fan, and there are a lot of you out there, that addition of Castellanos has got to be putting a lot of smiles on a lot of faces, including my buddy Phil Chaplin this morning. So 4 for 5 night for Castellanos. But didn't stop there. Chris Bryant went 2 for 5, 2 RBIs. His average up to .287. Rizzo 2 for 4. His average up to .290. Javi Baez, Superman, went with 1 hit last night. He's .284 on the season. And Kyle Schwarber hit his 29th homer. Now, pitching-wise, not a lot to be proud of last night if you're a Cub, other than the 8th and 9th innings. We'll talk about those in a moment. Darvish started the game, didn't walk a batter, so that's encouraging. Went 5 1/3, struck out 8. That's encouraging. But he gave up 4 long balls. Yeah, 4 home runs last night given up by Yu Darvish. Not the kind of performance there you want, but he did have the bright side of pitching 5 1/3 and striking out 8 with no walks. Holland, who I talked about on Tuesday, a great addition, but not so much last night. 2/3 of an inning, 3 hits, 2 earned runs. He also had a walk. Chatwood blew a save. He came in to pitch, didn't retire a batter. In the process, gave up 2 hits and 2 earned runs. But then you get into the 8th and 9th when Kinsler comes in, gets the win, and Kimbrel comes in the 9th, throws a perfect 9th inning, and strikes out 2 batters in the process. So it was a huge game for the Cubs. They win last night. Looking at that Central Division, of course, the Cubs, they'll entertain the Giants again today. The Cubs have a half-game lead this morning over the Cardinals in the division, a 3.5-game lead over Milwaukee. And Lenny talked about, I think Lenny's gone to the pool to check on some things, but Lenny asked this morning, should he throw in the towel on the Reds? And the answer is yes. The Reds are now 8 games out. They're winners of 4 of their last 10. They play at Pittsburgh today. I'm counting the Reds out. They're 8 games out in the division, 60 and 66 overall. In the National League West, the Dodgers are 40 games over 500. Beat Toronto last night 2-1. Play Toronto again today at Chavez Ravine. The Diamondbacks are in second place in the division, 20 games out at 64 and 54. Now, wild card, you got a race there. We'll talk about that for just a moment. Washington, they are 1.5 up. They're in the first wild card spot right now. They've won 8 of 10. They beat Pittsburgh last night 11-1. What a trouncing that one was. St. Louis holds the second wild card spot this morning. They play Colorado today at home. The Mets are 1.5 as are the Phillies out of that second wild card, both with 66 and 60 records, 36 games to play for each. Told you earlier the Mets are home to Cleveland. Philadelphia, they play at Miami. Just to go a couple more teams, Milwaukee 3 out of the wild card and Arizona 4.5. So that's where we stand this morning looking at the standings. I want to talk about Before I talk about the games last night, some minor league action last night. You know I love to go down on the farm. Good morning, Andrea. How are you? Phil Chappie. I propose Pittsburgh to get the next Major League Baseball team. Well, there are a couple more, maybe Baltimore, maybe Detroit, who are a lot worse off than Pittsburgh. Trust me. Looking at the farm last night, I want to go through just a couple of top performers, if you will allow me to do so. I want to talk about Luis Campusano for the Padres, their number 8 prospect. He was named the California League's co-MVP on Wednesday. He went 2 for 5 celebrating that honor, including a walk-off 3-run homer for Class A Advanced Lake Elsinore. He's 20 years old. He's one of the best catching prospects this season, hitting-wise. He has 14 homers on the season, 27 doubles, leads the California League in batting average at .321 and third in RBIs at 72. So write that name down, Luis Campusano. If you are in dynasty leagues, he could well be a catcher worth grabbing onto for your future needs in your dynasty leagues. Sean Murphy and Sheldon Neuse, both prospects for the A's. They were playing for AAA Las Vegas. Boy, what a whooping this one was, huh? 18-4 they win last night. Murphy and Neuse did half the damage, combining for 9 RBIs for the Las Vegas Aviators. Murphy was playing his first game since returning from the injured list. He made what a return, pair of home runs and 6 RBIs. And for Neuse, he hit a homer, and that home run yesterday gave him 3 homers in the past 5 games with 9 RBIs over that span. Now, why we're talking about the A's, we talked about earlier the fact that they've beaten the Yankees 2 in a row. And not mentioned here in prospects, but I want to talk about it real quick, is Jesus Luzardo. He pitched, and let me tell you what he did. He went 4 2/3 innings on Monday. He gave up 3 hits, struck out 5. A real good bounce back from his last outing when he only went 3 1/3 innings. Of course, he's the top pitching left-handed prospect in Major League Baseball. He threw 70 pitches in this outing, and when rosters expand, it looks like the timing could be just right for Luzardo to hop in. And I say that because he probably needs 2 more starts at the minor league level. It works out with the minor league schedule. He will be able to get those 2 more starts before the end of August, which should result, in my opinion, based on his performance and his pedigree in the minor leagues, to a promotion to Oakland. Now, last night in that Yankee game, Mike Fiers was the starter, went 5 1/3, gave up 2 earned runs, struck out 4. He picked up the win with his 12-3 record. Pretty good, huh? Diekman got a hold, his 22nd. Petit got a hold, his 24th. Trinan got a hold, his 2nd. Lenny mentioned it. The rookie Puck came on, pitched a third of an inning, gave up a hit, gave up a walk, but he got his first hold of the year. And what about Hendricks, the closer out in Oakland? He got his 15th save last night. He pitched an inning and 2/3, struck out 3 batters, just locked down on the Yankees. Jay Happ pitched for the Yankees 4 innings, 5 earned runs, gave up 2 home runs. Green and Ottavino mopped up, so to speak. For the Oakland A's, Semien went 1 for 3. Chris Davis hit his 18th homer. Semien his 22nd. Piscotty hit his 13th. Piscotty went 2 for 3. The A's only got 6 hits, but they made them count. They scored 6 runs out of it. For the Yankees, LeMahieu went 0 for 5. Judge went 0 for 5. So the top 2 hitters in the Yankee lineup last night both went 0 for 10 combined. Urshela 2 for 4. Gregorius 2 for 4. Tauchman 2 for 4. Ford 3 for 4. The bottom of the order looked really good. Ford hit his 5th homer in the 7th off of Petit. But not enough as the A's win. And I bring up Luzardo. I talk about these prospects. Don't you just get the feeling Chris Davis is going to really heat it up here as we wind down the season? Don't you get the feeling that Olson and Chapman and these Oakland A's, they are a force to be reckoned with? And I talk about Luzardo because if you throw Luzardo in that pitching staff, I've talked about the bullpen already, he could really be a difference maker down the stretch for the swinging A's. So, in fantasy, do you stash him? Have you stashed him? Do you get him now? I say yes. I say he will be he may be up before the September 1st call-up date. If not, he will be then. And I think he could certainly be someone who could make a difference in the way the fantasy season ends. Looking at more prospects, how about the Tigers? We talked about them a minute ago. Just having a horrendous year. As you look at the standings, or as I looked at the standings this morning, they are a game and a half behind Baltimore for the worst record in the American League. Okay? They are 38-86, but there is some hope. Isaac Paredes, their number 5 prospect, and Willie Castro, their number 11 prospect. Last night, Castro recorded his first career multi-homer game in the opener of a doubleheader against Indianapolis. He's 22 years old. He's a switch hitter. He went 2 for 4. He now is hitting .301 on the season. He has 11 home runs. Paredes, he had he went 8 for 11 in the doubleheader. Wow, against Richmond. Gotta love that. 3 for 5 with an RBI in the opener. And then he's their number 5 prospect. He finished the nightcap 5 for 6 with a double, a walk, and 3 RBIs. He's now driven in 59 runs in 116 games, and he again is the Tigers' number 5 prospect. Keep your eye on that. Brewer Hicklin for the Royals. I watched him play over the weekend for Class A Advanced Wilmington. They had a doubleheader yesterday against Salem. He had 4 runs scored and 4 RBIs. He had a pair of home runs and a double. He's had 11 homers and 38 steals this season. He combines power and speed. Brewer Hicklin, a top prospect for the Kansas City Royals. Clark Schmidt, the Yankees' number 5 prospect. He was pitching last night. He dominated in his return from an injured list. He only struck out 9, and he faced 3 above the minimum over 6 2/3 scoreless innings. He threw 57 of 92 pitches for strikes. So Clark Schmidt, a top Yankee prospect. Unholy Toledo in the chat room says, and the A's have done all this without Manaea. Well, I talked about Luzardo. Manaea is another interesting arm that could be pivotal going down the stretch. Now, the thing about Manaea, as you know, he has had shoulder problems this year. Coming back at Triple-A, Unholy, had somewhat of a setback, but it looked like I think it was Sunday, he pitched against Albuquerque. If I recall correctly, he allowed 2 earned runs on 2 hits and struck out 6. So it was an impressive return. After he came back from that injury, he threw 91 pitches. So he may be ready for a start with Oakland any time now. I wouldn't be surprised if he got called up this week. So he may decide, though, Oakland, to keep him at the minors. You know, they're playing some great baseball. But can you imagine if the A's, when they get Manaea, and it's not if, but it's when they add Manaea and Luzardo to this pitching staff to go along with that bullpen that's really strong. I mean, Oakland, they're going to be a force going down the stretch. And I think we talked about which of those 3 teams, and I haven't seen anybody in the chat room. Maybe I've missed it. But tell me, chat room, Cleveland, Tampa, Oakland, which of those 3, which 2 make the wild card? Who's the odd man out, so to speak? You need to let me know what you think. I think Oakland's in. I think it comes down to Cleveland, Minnesota, and Tampa. And my prediction could be Minnesota's the odd person out. I'm really surprised Cleveland has not overtaken the Twins. The Twins have been resilient. Give them that. But interesting to see. So let me know what you think about that. One more prospect I want to talk about down on the farm, Tim Cate for the Nationals, throwing for Class A Advanced Potomac. He has started 4 times in the month of August. He's had quality starts in all 4. He's a 21-year-old left-hander, a 2018 second-round draft pick. He has 132 strikeouts in 131 innings between Potomac and Class A Hagerstown. He's a prospect I don't see the Nationals letting go of. I've watched him pitch and in the Carolina League this year, and he's a talent. He really is a talent. So we'll keep our eye on how that goes. I want to talk about we talk about hot hitters. I want to do that momentarily, but I want to talk about some cold hitters, okay? And I'm going to give you some statistics on some players that you probably don't want to have on your team. There's no one colder than Chester Cuthbert, okay? His last game, he went 0 for 4. He is, in his last 7, 0 for. Yeah, you heard me right, 0 for. Now, he's a Kansas City Royal, and I don't know, maybe you have him on your team, but if you do, I'd say it's time to cut bait. He's like 0 for his last 36. Yeah, you heard me right. John Jay, in his last 7, batting 100. His last game, he was 0 for 3. Charlie Culberson for Atlanta, in his last 7, batting 105. Melky Cabrera, in his last 7, batting 111. Jose Peraza, last 7, batting 182. I mean, these are guys that, and here's one, and maybe this is worthy of some discussion. And Unholy says, A's will be in. I see the Rays coming up short. Okay, good. I like that. I assume the analysis there is Rays' concern of hitting. Excuse me. I wonder what will happen with that's Chris Davis territory over 36. It is. I mean, Cuthbert had been hitting pretty decently, and all of a sudden, just somebody turned off the power, and it didn't work. Peraza, 182 over his last 7 for Cincinnati. And here's the one I want to talk about. Chat room, help me out. Josh Reddick, his last 7, 091. No homers, no RBIs, no stolen bases, 0 for 4 his last start. So, is it time to talk about Kyle Tucker being called up and playing a possible significant role for Houston as we close out the season? I mean, Reddick has had a horrible month of August. He's had a horrible last week. He's just not producing at all offensively, and I know they love the veteran presence. I get that, but they also like to have players who can play and hit. So with Houston having this 7.5 game lead in the West, the second best record in the American League, do they soon call up Kyle Tucker to see what the kid can do and give him a chance to play? And what if they do? And what if he hits? Just curious, how many of you guys have added Kyle Tucker in fantasy, stashed him away, been hoping for an opportunity? Well, maybe it's going to come sooner than later. Ryan O'Hearn for Kansas City, his last 7 games hitting 160. Max Stassi for the Angels, his last 7 hitting 111. And Matt Duffy for Tampa, his last 7 hitting 143. So, with those cold hitters, who's hot? Let's talk about it. Now, those cold hitters I don't want in my team right now. If I've got Josh Reddick, I'm looking someone to take his place in fantasy. It's not just been a week with Josh Reddick. It's been a month. Let's look at some hot hitters. Give you some statistics here. These are over, preface it so I won't have to say this over and over. These are over the last 7 games. Okay, last 7 games. Let's talk about Max Muncy for the Dodgers. 5 for his last 16, and all 5 of those hits have been home runs. His slugging is 1.250, his OPS 1.792. His on-base percentage, .542. He's walked 7 times in addition to those 5 home runs, driven in 8, and scored 7. Anthony Rizzo, .421 average, 8 for his last 19 with 4 home runs. Adam Eaton for Washington. And if you want to look at why Washington has been successful, you don't have to look a lot further than the top of their order. And Adam Eaton sits right there at the top of that order. Last night I told you they win 11-1 over Pittsburgh. 11-1. Okay? So let's take a look at who was instrumental in that 11-1 game last night for the Washington Nationals. And here we go. Turner went 2 for 6. Eaton 2 for 5. Rendon 2 for 4. So right there, your top 3 spots in the order, you went 6 for 15. That's a 400 average out of your top 3. Soto 0 for 4 last night. Cabrera 1 for 5. Adams 1 for 5. Robles didn't hit, but he got 2 walks and scored 2 runs. And Yan Gomes went 2 for 3. So as I look at hot hitters, I see Adam Eaton. I just called him out. He's hitting .417, 10 for his last 24 with 3 home runs. And a big reason why Washington is playing so well in the month of August. Tom Murphy for Seattle, 6 for his last 12. Trevor Story, 10 for his last 22. That's a .455 average. Trevor Story's had a really good year for fantasy. Now, I know the Colorado Rockies, they've suffered. But when you look at Story and you look at the total package, I mean, here you go. He's hitting .296 on the year, 93 runs scored, 28 home runs, 74 RBIs, and 18 stolen bases. It's a solid year. And it's a shame it's wasted on the Rockies having such a bad year. And again, I said it, he's been hot the last 7 games, hitting .455. We just got some chat room chat about Castellanos being hotter than a steamroller. No doubt about it. He's on my list to talk about, so we'll talk about him right now. He has, again, as I said earlier, just been a different player since coming over from Detroit. And looking at his last, I've just lost my place here on my notes. I get all excited talking about these guys, and then I can't find my place. Oh, my gosh. We'll find it in a minute. But he has just been a savior for the Cubs. No way around it. And here we go. His last 3 games, let's look at those. 2 for 4 with a homer, 3 for 5 with a homer, 4 for 5 with a homer. So in his last 14 at-bats, he has 9 hits. 9 for his last 14 with 5 RBIs and 5 runs scored. He's upped his season average to .293. He's got 19 homers and 49 RBIs, but he has done so much since coming over to Chicago. And I read some quotes early in the year where he was complaining about the stadium in Detroit, how a lot of balls that would be home runs in other parks were just fly ball outs in Detroit. He was frustrated. He got over that frustration, didn't he, when he got out of town and got over to Chicago. So Cody Bellinger hitting .318. Pete Alonso, .480, 12 for his last 25. Moustakas, .400, 8 for his last 20 with 4 home runs. Trout, .367, 11 for his last 30 with 3 home runs. Jonathan Villar, 10 for his last 21 with 2 homers. That's a .476 average. Charlie Blackmon, .455, 10 for his last 22. These are some hot hitters, guys. Mike Yastrzemski. Now, let's pause a moment here. The Giants have taken Mike Yastrzemski, put him at the top of their order, and he has done nothing but hit since he's been put at the top of that order. Over his last 7, yeah, he does. Castellanos just looks like a Cub. But you know what? Here's a thought, Chaplain. You know, you take a guy hitting like Castellanos, 9 for his last 14. You could put that guy in any uniform and he'd look like a player on that team, don't you think? Yeah, put him in a Red Sox uniform hitting 9 for 14. He'd look like a Red Sox. I think you might be a little bit partial there, Chappie. But he certainly is a big part of that club now. And great move. Kudos to Theo Epstein bringing him over right at the trade deadline. Other hot hit. I'm talking about Mike Yastrzemski, though. The Giants, who I didn't give a chance. I mean, I still don't consider them a legit threat. But I look at the wild card standings. They're only 4 games out of the wild card. A big part of their success this year has been Yastrzemski. 11 for his last 27, leading off, 4 home runs, 6 RBIs. Now, he doesn't walk at all, okay? But he does have a 1.37 OPS. How about Ahmad Rosario for the Mets over his last 7? 13 for 28. That's a 464 average. There's so many hitters who are hitting. It's an interesting look to try to find one that may be a free agent that you can put on your team. Here you go. Austin Slater for San Francisco. Over his last 7 games, hitting .571. Austin Slater. It's too late to pick up a Willie Calhoun. It's too late to pick up a Matt Olson. It's too late to pick up a Nicholas Castellanos. Oh, by the way, 440 over his last 7. I've held that out for you. 11 for his last 25. So who's on this list that may be able to be gotten? How about Brian Goodwin for Anaheim? 8 for his last 26, 2 home runs. That's a 308 average. Dexter Fowler, 8 for his last 24, a 333 average. Evan Longoria, 8 for his last 22, a 364 average. So take a look at those guys. Those are some hot, those are some not. Beware of the not. Keep your eye on Kyle Tucker. Keep your eye on the internet to see, Twitter breaks it quickly. Don't be shocked to see the Astros bring the kid up. Okay, let's look at some box scores for last night that we haven't looked at. We've already talked about the Yankees and the A's. San Diego and Cincinnati. Castillo with the win last night for the Reds. He's 12-5 with a 3.04 ERA. He pitched 6 strong innings, giving up only 1 earned run, 4 strikeouts. And how about Iglesias? I guess he's happy now. He was complaining all year about I'm being used unfairly. I'm being used out of place. Make me the closer. Bah, bah, bah. Well, he pitched the 9th inning last night, got his 26th save, struck out 2 batters, no hits, no walks, no runs. Maybe he's happy now. Maybe we should rub his head and say, way to go. You closed out a game for the Reds. Better luck next year. Iglesias, who Lenny talked about being the top fielding all-time shortstop. Well, I'll tell you what. This year he's not hitting too bad. He went 2 for 4 last night. He's up to 295 on the season. Batting second in that order last night for the Reds. So, in fantasy, do you own him? Really? Do you own Iglesias? And if not, is there a reason why? Because he is better than a lot of players out there. So, keep your eye on him. 295. Suarez went 2 for 4, 257 average. Aquino 1 for 3, still hitting 313. Irvin looks like he's the everyday left fielder now. 2 for 4 last night, a 326 average. The Reds are a good team. They just started, I guess, playing well too late this year. But look out for them next year. Lenny said that this morning, and I agree. Tampa and Seattle. Last night, Tampa wins 7-6. D'Arnaud went 3 for 3. Kiermaier went 2 for 4. Heredia went 2 for 3. Charlie Morton started. only went 5 innings, gave up 3 runs, struck out 3, walked 2. Nick Anderson, yet another hold. What a trade that was for Tampa. If you are in a league where holds count, you need to go get Nick Anderson. He has not allowed a run in 9 games since coming over at the trade deadline from the Marlins. He pitched the 8th inning last night. Now, Pagan, who had been pitching really well, blew the save, his 7th blown save, but he got the win. I mean, again, Lenny said this a couple weeks ago. I totally agree. If you blow a save, I don't think you should get a win pitching the same inning. He blew the inning in the 9th. Tampa scores runs in the 9th, so he gets the win. I just think I think it stinks. But that's just me. And that doesn't really matter since I think it, right? For Seattle, Crawford went 3 for 5, hitting .250 on the year. Fraley called up, started in center field, batted 8th, went 0 for 3 with a strikeout. Tampa wins, stay in that American League wild card hunt. Chicago, Giolito threw his 2nd shutout of the year last night. He's 14-6. He has a 3.20 ERA, struck out 12 with no walks. What a renaissance man he's been this year. I mean, really. How many of you drafted him? Did you really draft Giolito, if you're honest? If you picked him up off waivers, way to go. But if you drafted him, you were nuts. Leury Garcia went 2 for 5. Anderson went 2 for 5. Abreu, red hot, went 3 for 5. So your top 3 hitters there, a combined 7 for 15 last night. 476 average out of those top 3 hitters. Odorizzi, the loser, 13-6. And this is why I think Cleveland can take Minnesota over. I'm not carried away with Minnesota starting pitching. I love Cleveland starting pitching. Last night, the Twins only got 3 hits. They struck out 12 times. That's what kind of team you've got with Minnesota. Giolito owned them last night. Kepler went 0 for 4. I know he's hit a bunch of home runs, but also know he can strike out a lot. A lot. Polanco went 1 for 4. Cruz went 1 for 4. Rosario left the game with a tight hamstring. They're off today, and what I'm reading this morning is they don't expect him to miss any time. He's had a great year for the Twins. Colorado, 7. Arizona, 2. 7-2, Colorado wins. Tapia in that leadoff spot last night went 2 for 5. He's hitting .290 on the year. I've already talked about Charlie Blackmon. Dyson went 0 for 4. Ketel Marte, another hit. He's hitting .319. What a season that kid's having. Mike Leake, the loser. Melville, the winner for Colorado. Went 7 innings, gave up 1 earned run last night in that win. Washington and Pittsburgh, we've talked about that box score. I don't know if I talked about Patrick Corbin. I don't think I did. He went 8 innings last night. Only 3 hits allowed. 2 walks and 4 strikeouts. He raised his record to 10-5. Did Patrick Corbin. Kansas City and Baltimore. Now this was a doozy, huh? I'm looking at the attendance. Kansas City at Baltimore. Anybody want to give me a guess in the chat room on the attendance last night between the Royals at the Orioles? Did you go? Were you there? I'll give you the attendance since I don't see any numbers coming up. Anybody want to guess? I'm looking in the chat room. Andrea, Clarona, Douglas Boyle, DeVic DeBizzle, Phil Chaplin. Andrea says 12,000. You're high. 6,000. You're low. How about somewhere in the middle? Let's do it. 9,872 in a stadium that holds 48,000 people. It looks like what? No one is there. Kansas City and Baltimore. Is this a concern for Major League Baseball? Or is it not? Or does it care? Looking at the box score, Alberto went 1 for 4. Villar went 2 for 3. Wilkerson 3 for 4. Brooks, the winning pitcher, 5 innings for the Orioles, 1 earned run, 4 strikeouts. Montgomery, who I'd looked at in CBS leagues, picked up by a lot of people in fantasy. Why, I don't know. He's the loser last night. 5 innings, 5 earned runs. I don't want him on my fantasy team. Do you want him on yours? A lot of people in CBS leagues must. They were adding him like crazy. Come on. And he chokes it up against the Orioles. So Andrea says, no concern. My only thing is, you got the haves and you got the have-nots. And, the thing about the NBA, the regular season to me, NBA, is just not interesting because of the have and have-nots. You pretty much know who's going to make the playoffs in the NBA before the season starts, and Major League Baseball is the same way. Here's my concern from a fantasy perspective. Without fans, you don't have fantasy. Okay? If the parity was more across the board in Major League Baseball, think about how important it would be to own players, fantasy-wise, on teams who are right now not relevant. I mean, you look at your fantasy teams, and I've said this before, I want players on teams who score a lot of runs. And teams who score a lot of runs are teams with winning records. So you take a look, and I've said it time and time again, Kansas City, to be so bad, has more fantasy relevant players than any team in Major League Baseball. But so many of these bad teams do not have fantasy relevant players because they're so bad. So you wind up drafting players on 4, 5, or 6 teams, and that's where the focus is. Were there to be more parity, which I think is what the salary cap issue was all about intending to solve, but it hasn't worked. Kansas City, bad. Detroit, bad. And I know they're drafting and building up farm systems, but these are the kind of teams who are bad for a long time and good for only a short time. Big market teams, the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Yankees, Houston. These are the top 5 largest cities in America. They're the teams who win. They're the teams who dominate fantasy. Last night, the Angels played the Texas Rangers. This was a great game if you like tight scores. 8-7, Texas wins. For the Angels, Fletcher, 3 for 5, 287 average on the year. Pujols, hitting lately, 2 out of 5. Goodwin, I said a few minutes ago, a hot hitter, 2 out of 4 for the Rangers. Andrus went 3 for 5. Pence went 2 for 5 with 3 RBIs. Willie Calhoun, 2 for 4. His 13th homer. What a player, hitting 295 on the year. If you added Willie Calhoun, kudos. Minor, he was horrible. 5 2/3 innings, 10 hits, 6 earned runs. Now Hernandez got the win. Pitched 2 1/3 in relief for Texas, no earned runs. And the Angels have just fallen off the map, right? Boy, it's a good thing they have Mike Trout. Philadelphia and Boston. Phillies 5, Red Sox 2. Boston is in the toilet. You just get the feeling they have quit, all except for maybe Devers, hitting .329. Got his 47th double last night. Yeah, that's right. 47 doubles on the season so far for Rafael Devers. He got an RBI last night, his 102nd. What a season. Imagine Boston without Devers this year. For Philly, Hoskins led off. A hit and 2 runs and 2 walks. Harper went 1 for 4. Dickerson 2 for 5. Smiley started, went 3 2/3, gave up 2 earned runs. It became a bullpen game after that, and over the last 5 1/3 innings, the Philadelphia bullpen only gave up 3 hits and no earned runs and only 1 walk. Great effort by that Philadelphia bullpen last night as they beat the Red Sox in front of 37,000 at Fenway Park in Boston. Cleveland and the Mets. I think I told you Cleveland won 3-0. Stroman left early. How long will he be out? We don't know. I think I said 3-0 Mets. It was 4-3 Mets. 4-3 Mets. I looked at the wrong line. Pardon me. Avalon gets the win for the Mets, pitching the 9th inning. Brad Hand chokes it up, blows his 5th save, gets the loss. Pitched 2/3 of an inning, gave up 3 hits, gave up 2 runs. Now, here's the question. The Cleveland Indians, that was the 5th blown save for Brad Hand. Carlos Carrasco, coming back from the leukemia situation, pitched his last outing, pitched an effective inning in relief. He's due to pitch another inning today. Is Cleveland thinking that Carrasco could be the closer? Should Hand continue to struggle? They're in a dogfight for the division. They're in a dogfight for the wild card. They've got tremendous starting pitching. Their batting has coming around lately. Listen to the lineup. I mean, Lindor, Allen, Santana, Puig, Ramirez, Kipnis, Perez, Naquin, Franmil on the bench last night. The batting order is pretty good. Hand's got to be a concern now with 5 blown. Plutko pitched good in starting last night. Got a quality start for Cleveland. 6 innings, 2 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, and only 1 walk. But is Carrasco going to be the closer? Phil Chaplin says Hand choked. I get it, Arn. Let's see how they do coming back today in Flushing against the Mets. Miami and Atlanta. Atlanta wins, shuts out Miami last night, 5-0. Julio Teheran. What do you think of Teheran? I mean, he's the girl with the curl, right? When he's good, he's really good. But when he's bad. Last night he was really good. 7 innings, 5 hits, 9 strikeouts. Newcomb pitched the 8th. Tomlin pitched the 9th. Carson Smith for Miami, 6 innings, 5 earned runs, 7 Ks, 4 walks, gave up 2 home runs. Who were they to? Hechavarria hit his 6th, and Ronald Acuna Jr. hitting .296 on the year, hit his 36th home run last night in the 5th inning off Carson Smith with 1 on and 1 out. Acuna now has 87 RBIs on the year to go along with those 36 homers and that .296 batting average. Who's MVP in the National League if the season ended today? Would it be Acuna? How many votes would he split with teammate Freddie Freeman, who's hitting .304? You got to think it's Bellinger in L.A., right, with the numbers he's put up. But Acuna is probably a top 5 guy on MVP voting, right? I'd give it to Bellinger. I'd give it to Yelich second. Only reason the Brewers could finish in the middle of the pack without Yelich. Maybe it finished last without Yelich. But do the Dodgers have the 84-44 record without Bellinger? I just think Bellinger's your MVP. I think Yelich is a close second. I think Acuna is third and Freeman's fourth. Disagree? Put it in the chat room. Let's talk about it. I'm throwing it out there. So we can have some discussion on National League Most Valuable Player for 2019. But Teheran, a great outing last night. And where does Teheran fall in the playoff picture for the Braves? Is he their number 2? Is he their number 3? You got to figure Soroka's number 1, right? Doesn't it probably depend on how they finish out the year? Is Teheran 2? Is Teheran 3? We'll see. Milwaukee, St. Louis, the Cardinals 3, Milwaukee 5, the Brewers win. Hauser the winner. The bullpen, perfect 3 2/3 innings, no hits. Well, not a perfect. No hits in 3 2/3, only 1 walk. Hauser went 5 1/3, gave up 1 earned run, 6 strikeouts. Wainwright, the loser, 9 9, 5 innings, 5 earned, 1 home run allowed. For the Cardinals, no player had more than 1 hit. Molina, the only extra base hit. It was a double. Fowler singled. Wong singled. Ozuna singled. DeYoung singled. Munoz singled. 6 hits on the night. They left 13 on base. Milwaukee, 8 hits, 5 runs. Keston Hiura, 2 for 4. Home run by Mike Moustakas, his 31st of the year. What a great season from Moustakas. He had, his line was not that impressive till you look at it all the way across. 1 at bat, 1 run, 1 hit, 3 RBIs, and 3 walks. I think that's a great line, particularly if you're in an on-base percentage fantasy league. Keston Hiura went 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs. Kane, Grandal, and Yelich all got 1 hit apiece. Milwaukee hanging on for dear life in that Central Division and in the wild card. They had to get a win against St. Louis, and they did. We talked about the Cubs and the Giants already. I don't think we need to hear it twice, do you? 12-11, the Cubs win a great one. Houston beats Detroit. Detroit beats Houston 2-1 last night. Justin Verlander going up against his former teammates. And Verlander pitched great. 9 innings. Quality start. Complete game. 2 earned runs. 2 hits. No walks. 11 strikeouts. But the two hits were home runs that he gave up. One to Ronnie Rodriguez, his 9th of the year in the 5th inning. The other to Hicks, his 9th of the year in the 9th inning. And Houston just couldn't put it together. Only 2 players had hits last night for the Astros. Springer went 2 for 4, and Chirinos, the catcher, went 4 for 4, and one of those was his 14th homer in the 7th inning. He also doubled, 2 doubles last night. So Chirinos had no problem of Daniel Norris and company. But the rest of the crowd did. Altuve, 0 for 3. Bregman, 0 for 3. Alvarez, 0 for 4. Gurriel, 0 for 4. Marisnik, 0 for 3. Mayfield, 0 for 3. Straw, 0 for 3. And I didn't call out Josh Reddick because he didn't play. What did they do with Reddick? What did they do with Tucker? Dodgers, Toronto. Last game we're going to go over from last night. The Dodgers win 2-1. Buehler, awesome game. 7 innings, no earned, 8 strikeouts, only 5 hits allowed. Kenley Jansen blows a save. Baez gets the win by pitching the 9th. For Toronto, Font started 2 innings. It was a bullpen game. Hitting-wise, Grichuk doubled his 21st. McKinney doubled his 12th. Rowdy Tellez hit his 15th homer in the 9th off Kenley Jansen. There's your blown save, Kenley. For the Dodgers, Seager hit his 35th double. Chris Taylor his 4th triple. Will Smith his 12th homer. Muncy his 33rd homer. Game winner off Maiza in the 10th inning with no on and 1 out. It was a walk-off in Chavez Ravine last night for Max Muncy and the Dodgers. As the beat goes on in L.A., they win 2-1. That's a look at last night's actions, last night's box scores. let's go over for just a moment the schedule for today. Yesterday, of course, was a full 15-game slate. As we look at Thursday's schedule, first of all, there'll be a resumption of the suspended game between the Royals and the Red Sox from August 7th. That game is tied at 4 as we enter the 10th inning. That'll be followed by, well, no, it's just a resumption. That's a makeup game. Both teams would have been off today otherwise. At 2:20 today, the Giants are at the Cubs. Samardzija at Hendricks. That'll be a good one from Wrigley Field. Nationals at Pirates from PNC Park. The Nationals have not announced the starter, Stephen Brault, pitching for the Pirates. Tampa Bay is at Baltimore at Oriole Park. Kyle Yarborough, who has pitched really great in the last 2 outings. He's 11-3 with a 3.34 ERA against Wojciechowski for the Orioles. Indians at the Mets in Flushing. Savali for the Cleveland Indians. Noah Syndergaard for the Mets. Sandy Alcantara takes on the Braves at SunTrust Park in Atlanta. And Mike Soroka. Let's do it one more time. Mike Soroka. There you go. The Rockies and Cardinals. Busch Stadium. Marquez and Michaelis. Tigers and Astros. Zimmerman and Garrett Cole from Minute Maid Park. That's at 8:10 tonight. The Rangers and Gerardo take on the White Sox and Detweiler at Guarantee Field in Chicago at 8:10 tonight. And then we got some late games. The Yankees at the Athletics at Oakland Coliseum. It'll be Tanaka and Tanner Roark at 9:37 p.m. And finally, closing out the day, it'll be Wogesbach for Toronto. He's 4-1 at L.A. Maeda for the Dodgers. The Blue Jays 52-77. L.A. 84-44. And that game's at 10:10 tonight. So I want to thank everybody for being with me today. I want to go through the chat room. Andrea, Clarona Cyclonus, Cam, Devic DeBizzle. I just lost my space. Here we go. Lenny, Malpow, Phil Chaplin. Always a pleasure. And I had a problem Tuesday night, a family issue. I could not do the show. I let Lenny know. Chaplin did listen on my car, and it was a great show. You did. I hope everything's back to normal next week. Timothy Hooker, Unholy Toledo. It's great to see you guys in the chat room. Chappie's boy Brault going tonight. Watch that Pittsburgh game. I have heard so much about Stephen Brault all year, and he's Cy Young worthy, according to Chaplin. He's 3-2 with a 4.08 ERA. But I'm expecting great things today out of Brault against the Nationals, Chappie. So look for him to just put on a great performance tonight at PNC Park at home. And maybe after that, soon thereafter, the Pirates will be a major league team. You never know. I want to thank you guys for being with me this morning. Looking at our schedule for today, shall we? Following me, they're at 2 o'clock, Kevin Hastings, Aloha Fantasy Baseball. At 5:30 tonight, Money One is Twice as Nice with Cam. Something you got to listen to. You ready? This is got to listen to stuff. Chappie's Football Chat at 7 o'clock tonight. Chaplin will be talking about football. So stay tuned. Be on board for that one. It'll be a great one. And finally, at 11 o'clock tonight, Fantasy Fisticuffs Football. So it's an evening of football after a morning and afternoon of baseball. You can't beat that on this fantasy network, right? We got it all. You got some great podcasters. Support them. Listen in. First pitch today, 2:20. There's a 1:05 resumption of the game between the Royals and Red Sox. So you got your baseball. You got your fantasy chat. Thank you for being with me this morning on Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports.